Well, guys, quick update. Um, I got the radio going, so I'll have to talk a bit loudly. It's just my charger for the GoPro. Um, Big bag of styrofoam that'll eventually be recycled and used as molds for lost foam casting. I want to make a foundry, but Amazon fucked up and lost my parcel, and I'm waiting for a refund from them before I try to purchase it again. But as you can see, I've got a pile of lumber here. I had to clean out this corner in the garage, and this is the whole problem of no room. There's an 18-foot flat bottom skiff that I got going on about a year and a half ago. Had a flurry of 3 months of excitement, and I got this far. I have to fiberglass the bow just to clean that up, like put a couple layers there. Eventually the whole bottom will be fiberglassed with epoxy. So the lumber, like the carpentry or whatever, doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be the shape. For example, these little seams are just butt joined with marine grade plywood. And what I'm doing, the stage I'm at now, is just putting marine, like basically backing. On the inside, you put a backing plate with epoxy, and I've actually got some screws that are holding well. In order to curve the plate initially, I have to use one long screw that punctures through, but then I'll epoxy over that and then fiberglass. The short screws I will leave in. But this is so that I have these clamps, the normal kind, trigger clamps. But for this kind of a job, you really need very specific, they look like a massive clothespin, boat clamps, which you put on the gunnels and you jam it up this way, and then there's a wedge that holds those together. I'm probably only going to build one boat of this type. It's pretty big. As you can see, I've got a kind of wiggle along beside of it. Got the radio blast in here. And what you see over here are the parts. I've got the engine. I could barely lift that. That was at my limit. That sucker's heavy, maybe 70, 80 pounds. I got it from the car into the garage and on the old workbench. This is the first workbench I built for these little woodworking tools. Got a little drill press, little mini bandsaw, and these are all the parts to a South Bend lathe. I originally wanted to build a gingery or gingery lathe, where you mold everything out of aluminum. But unfortunately, the accuracy of such a lathe, especially because I'm building it and it would have taken me forever. You see how long it takes for me to build a basic boat. Would have taken forever. I've got the lathe here, the actual bed and the headstock and most of the carriage. I took the tailstock off, but the carriage and the headstock are still on the bed. So that's in the car for a couple hours until I build a workbench to put it on. These are the bolts. It was pretty easy to get it off the guy's table. Basically 7 bolts, so 3 for the motor, a couple on each end of the maybe 3 or 4 on each end of the ways, for the footings for the ways. I wanted to get the lathe for about 800 bucks. That's roughly what it's worth. It's a 1950 South Bend, and I'm in Vancouver, Canada, so translate that to Canadian or American dollars. I went as high as $1,000 when we were talking, and he wouldn't go for it, cash, but he wouldn't go for $1,000 either. So he wanted $1,400, and I was really painful. It was painful to part with the money, but the guy's name was Hank. He's a very nice, gracious man, gave me all kinds of information about it, and I sweet talked him into putting in some extra tooling. Like I've got this massive, this is probably 200 bucks right here, this massive 4-jaw chuck. There's the original 3-jaw. What else did he put in? Oh, a live center, which this lathe originally didn't have, you know, it didn't ship, it had a deck center, I think, when it originally shipped. So it's got a nice live center for me. This is an arbor that if I had a different style chuck, he gave me a chuck as well, which has the M2 taper on it, just like that. So there's a chuck in there. So the lathe is usable as is. Here's the belt for the motor. I started it this morning before I took it apart and threw it in the car. You guys will be happy to know that a lathe and $44 worth of lumber to build a workbench, plus the lathe, fit all in my Volvo. It's an old Volvo 850. I have another little BMW, an old one, 2001, that I like as my toy car, but you can't fit much in that. It's a little coupe. So this is where the lathe's going to go. I have built the sort of back end here, and then there's going to be a mirror of this, a front one. Essentially, I'm rebuilding this one with maybe slight modifications. I think I'm going to bring it out a couple inches. This is 2 feet wide, and I wanted to go 3 feet because it'll cover the wheel at the back, but if I go 2 feet 6 inches from the wall, I have another 6-inch clearance. So if I put the flywheel from the motor sort of in between the studs, I might actually be able to deal with it because the motor kind of hangs off the back. So I only really need 2 feet to actually mount the lathe. But I measured from the back of this when it was set up. I measured from the back of this flywheel hanging off the back. It's called a horizontal drive, and it was 3 feet clearance out to the edges of the knobs. So I needed 3 feet clearance by 4 feet. So I'm going to build this 4 feet long. I don't think I need extra room on the ends. Don't mind that so much. So at 2 feet 6 inches wide, the knobs will kind of stick out from the base a little bit, and the engine flywheel will stick out the back a little bit, which is perfectly fine with me as long as it's here. And it'll allow me a little bit of movement space between, so I can get in and around for cleaning. I could get to my drill press. I have a small vise here for woodworking, not very useful for metalwork, but that's just to hold stuff when I'm gluing and sawing. So yeah, keep this a short video. Everybody's seen people build workbenches. I'm not going to go into that, but I cut most of it already, and then when I cut stuff, obviously like a smart guy, I label it so I don't misplace it. I'm not doing, these are butt jointed, but I will do lap joints on the end most likely, like here. These are little lap joints. I thought that was kind of cool. So I'll probably lap joint the ends, and I'm not doing plywood for this workbench because of the weight of the lathe. I got some nice 2x8s. Got those for like $7.90, and most of this is going to be extra. These two will be extra. I may use 2 of these, but yeah, I basically got almost 3 2x4s extra, and so it could cost you a little less than 44 bucks to build a decent workbench that will actually hold a super heavy 9-inch South Bend lathe. So yeah, these are going to essentially be cut in half and put together. I don't even think I'm going to bother gluing them. I'll just nail them on there or screw them on. These are like 10-inch screws, massive, and they stick through a bit, but that'll all be not showing. It'll be all on the inside. These are some screws that I had left over from the boat. These are the keel. They go through the keel, so you only need so many of those. I got a whole box of them left over. Thought I'd use them up. I should have pre-drilled these, so just so you know, all you carpenter geniuses out there would have made me pre-drill those. I sunk 2 in each, and I may put a 3rd in later once I get it all set up and it's level and I don't have to worry about undoing anything. I may beef it up with an extra screw here and there, but these ripped right in there without even a pre-drill, so I'm not going to worry about it. They're going to hold super tight. But the good news is that if I move and have to move the lathe, I can do a couple things. I can either put wheels, like just lever up one end at a time and put coasters, wheels on this thing, wheel it into a truck up a ramp or something, or I can take this apart. So I can just take the lathe off of it and then take the ends off, and then I'm left with this and a few boards. So I could conceivably take it apart, pack it in a car, just like this one. I lag bolted the fronts. So I take out a few screws on the end, boom, it all comes down. Pop the top off, I could actually reassemble it. Okay, I'll get back to you when I finally get the lathe on the workbench, but I gotta finish the work Saturday. I gotta finish the workbench. I'm hoping to set the lathe up tonight. So it's been at it about an hour, just cutting stuff and getting that thing done. So took a short break. But this is my garage. I got way too much shit in here. It's a shared garage. All my neighbor's stuff is parked at the back. I got a bunch of my and their stuff here, and I just maxed out that shelf. I got everything on that shelf. I hope it doesn't collapse. But a lot of that stuff was here, and I got rid of it so that I could put the lathe here. It's a miracle I got enough room. Eventually I'm going to flip this onto a trailer and get it the hell out of here, and then the garage will be amazingly roomy, and you can almost back a car in here. So I might actually bring the little BMW in here for cleaning and tune-ups. But yeah, turn off the camera so I can get some work done, and we'll give you an update video. I love the idea of the gingery lathe. David Gingery's book is awesome, and I may still do that, but I just wanted a lathe, and I couldn't find anything locally, and this came up, and I jumped on it. And unfortunately, the guy knew I wanted a lathe, so he charged me exactly what he had into it. He bought it for I don't know what, and then he bought the chuck and a bunch of toys with it. So and he worked on it. It's relatively clean. I haven't had a chance to get the carriage or the apron off to look at that. I'm hoping that's relatively clean, and I won't have to deal with it. I do have a couple of videos that I may upload where I was shopping and I just first viewed it. But I think the video going made poor Hank a little nervous, and he kind of forgot that there's a lockout for the engaging the half nut. So he was kind of fiddling with that, and I thought, uh-oh, I better just turn off the camera, let him figure it out. But it works fine. We checked it again today, and I reminded him of that there's he kept having it in gear because he was showing me it has an automatic feed for the carriage as well, for the cross feed, but it also has the typical longitudinal for the whole carriage to move left and right, which is cool. But in order to just engage that big half nut and not use the clutch, you've got to have the transmission on the apron in neutral, in the middle position. And I noticed in my video when I watched it later that he actually had it for the top compound, for the carriage and the cross slide rather. So he had that all set up for the cross slide, and he kept trying to engage the half nut. And I didn't notice it at the time. We were gabbing, and so yeah. So if you do watch that video, you'll know why. I got him all flustered because he's probably not used to some idiot filming him while he's trying to show his lathe. So anyway, and he has two other lathes, so he probably eventually stopped working with this lathe. So he probably hasn't used it in months. Okay, well, thanks for checking in, and definitely like and subscribe, because as you can see, I need all the help I can get just to get this set up and running. And for parts, and because I'm poor now, I spent all my money, feel free to throw me a buck on Patreon. If you're at my YouTube channel, there should be a link right on the banner, the bottom right of the banner, where you can go to my Patreon. I think I called it The Maker's Path, but my YouTube channel is just my name for now. So my name is Patrick McKernan, and thanks again for stopping by. I'm going to turn off the camera and get back to work. It's almost dinner time. I got, yeah, wow, 3:55. Got to get moving. All right, thanks guys.